Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Michael, I want to begin with you, hot off the presses, the 2025 State of Abortion Report. You've been putting out this report for the past several years. First of all, tell us why you do it, and then, if you would, what were the major themes in this year's survey?
Well, we do this report to alert Pennsylvanians as to the continued prevalence of abortion in our Commonwealth. And what this report reveals this year is a 14-year high in the abortion numbers, due in part to the increase, especially of dangerous chemical abortions. They're called medical abortions, or the abortion pill, which are available online and ubiquitous in so many different ways and very dangerous, creating lots of complications. We also looked at the continued failed inspections that are happening at some abortion facilities, guidelines that were put into place in Pennsylvania after the Kermit Gosnell abortion clinic scandal, and yet we still continue to see failures in these inspections.
Read all about it. It's online, and we'll give that web address at the end. Jason, Governor Hochul has pledged $35 million in funding for Planned Parenthood. Why is she bailing out the nation's largest abortion provider?
Well, the governor will portray this as a contrast with what's happening at the federal government as there becomes greater restrictions on using dollars to fund abortions. The governor says we're simply just filling in where the federal government is falling short. The reality is, though, that this is a political base for the governor. And so if the governor fails to come through for Planned Parenthood, they may fail to deliver for her in her 2026 election.
I want to talk about an issue we don't a lot on this program, and that is illegal immigration as it pertains to big rig drivers. This was a big story in both New York and Pennsylvania this week. Michael, there was a 31-year-old Uzbeki national with ties to terrorism that got a commercial driver's license in your state over the summer. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation issuing this driver's license. A lot of folks want to know, how was this allowed to happen?
It was not only just a driver's license, but a real ID driver's license. This person should not have been granted this at all in Pennsylvania. What's interesting is there's a lot of finger-pointing going on right now in Harrisburg. A group of state senators asked PennDOT for an explanation, not just only on this case, but actually a letter that then went to PennDOT about 17 CDL drivers that were part of an arrest in Oklahoma, all of whom got their driver's licenses, their CDLs, from Pennsylvania. They're asking Governor Shapiro, how did this happen? Something is falling through the cracks.
Yeah, a lot of finger pointing at the previous administration as well on this one. I thought it was an underreported story in New York. Almost 40 illegal immigrants rounded up by Border Patrol agents at thruway rest stops from Syracuse to Buffalo. These guys also, Jason, had commercial driver's licenses. What can the state do better to guard against this?
Well, I think the state could start by, instead of giving favor to those who have entered the country illegally, we actually recognize that nations need borders and that they're there to protect the people of those countries. And just starting from that position point, I think we can then move forward. You know, as conservatives, we're not opposed to immigration. We would like to see legal immigration.
Michael, I want to talk about school choice in your state. It was a big issue in the recently adopted state budget. I know a lot of cyber charter schools are feeling shortchanged today. Governor Shapiro says he supports school choice, but does his rhetoric match reality?
I would say it does not. You know, when he first ran for governor, he was a proponent of school choice, and yet in his first budget, he line item vetoed it, and we've not seen a change in him since then. And that's typical of Governor Shapiro. He follows the political winds, and in this case, he's following the winds of the teachers union. That's one of the reasons why there was the cut in this budget on cyber charter schools. It not only impact the schools, but it impacts children in Pennsylvania who are getting a good education and now may be denied that choice.
Yeah. New York, Jason, we're still waiting to see what Governor Hochul will do with physician-assisted suicide. She has until the end of the year to decide what to do with that Senate-approved bill. I was reading an article about inadequate health care in Canada and how that's pushing more people toward this heinous practice. One man from Quebec who had developed bed sores in the hospital took his own life because of inadequate health care north of the border. I'm wondering if horror stories like that is why the governor is so hesitant to sign this bill into law.
Well, the governor has been very mum on this issue. We don't know how she's going to handle the legislation. We're waiting to see. But I will tell you that legislators have commented that the arguments coming out of Canada and the radical expansion of assisted suicide in that country is having an impact here in New York. We're so close to Canada, and so it is easy for us to hear those stories, to see what's happening there, and we hope that will have an impact as the governor considers how to handle state-sanctioned suicide.
Pennsylvania Senate Democrats, Michael, want to decriminalize homelessness. I didn't know it was a crime to be homeless, but they're pushing a bill that would require municipalities, before they fine people for loitering, they'd have to find them a place to stay at night. But what are your thoughts on this legislation in Pennsylvania and whether this is prudent action by PA Democrats?
Well, I certainly have compassion for the homeless, but much of it has to do with drug abuse and also with psychiatric problems, and those are the issues that need to be addressed. And just providing housing or a place to be doesn't really answer those problems. That's where I think government needs to be looking. The other thing is that government typically, at least what we've seen here in Harrisburg and in Pennsylvania, is often hostile to the Christian ministries that are really providing solid solutions to the homeless crisis, regulating them sometimes out of business or making it so hard for them to do it. And this bill by the Democrats really is calling for more government solutions. I don't think government is the answer to many of the society problems, including homelessness.
Yeah, I want to talk about prison reform. That's a big issue in New York this week. The governor announcing that they're going to be shutting down a prison in the North Country. They're going to be shutting off part of a prison near Buffalo. Those who are for this will say, look, the prison population is down 54% since the late 1990s. But I thought the Senate Minority Leader, Rob Ward, had an interesting point saying, hey, there's two sides to that coin. Maybe people are not being incarcerated as much as they should. But what are your thoughts overall as far as the need to close prisons in New York, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line because there are some politicians who want to see the prisons open because they are economic development, jobs in their districts, and that's a problem. We should not look at prisons as simply as jobs. We don't want to incarcerate people just to help the local economy. At the same time, though, I do think it has become very difficult to put people in prison that should be there. There are too many people that are committing violent crimes that are back on the streets to commit those crimes again, and so bail reform has been a problem. Regardless of how it is spun by those in Albany, I think we've got some work to do, and I'm hoping the legislature will grab it in an election year. Remember, that is the benefit of elections. It helps give a gut chicken to bring elected officials back in line with the will of the people.
Well, Michael, your colleague Dan Barkoyak did a great job talking about one of the things that was in this spending bill that passed the Congress and brought an end to the shutdown was hemp-derived products containing THC. They are off limits now. Some people in the hemp industry don't like this, but you argue this was the right move by the federal government. How come?
Yeah, and there are some people in the convenience store business that don't like it in gas stations and things because this material was ubiquitous. The THC-derived chemicals that are in drinks and edibles and those sorts of things that find themselves in convenience stores unregulated completely, and the whole purpose of them is psychotropic, to get people high. You have young people having significant access to it because it is in so many different stores, and we're grateful this came out of Washington to shut it down, not just in Pennsylvania, but nationwide.
Yeah, and then finally, Jason, a big story on New York. The governor is delaying, they call it the gas stove ban, but it's a bit more involved than just that. New home constructions, any building under 7 stories tall, could not hook up natural gas to those buildings. That is on hold pending court action. Wonder if this was a political move by the governor, or is she hitting the pause button here out of necessity?
Well, I suppose that two things can be true at the same time. I mean, there is certainly some large political benefits for the governor to hit pause at this time. However, there is also a necessity. Republicans and now some Democrats have written to the governor to say, look, we have to put a pause. We got to stop this. We got to get this back in line. There are places in New York where it gets very, very cold. And if the electric grid goes down, it is a real problem for people in those regions. So this is an important opportunity for, again, the voters to stand up and to say, no, we need these things in our state.
All right. That'll have to be the last word this week. But as we mentioned, that 2025 State of Abortion report is out in Pennsylvania. If you'd like to read it, there is a way you can do that. And Michael, what is your website, sir?
pafamily.org.
And stay involved on assisted suicide, a big issue in New York State. What will the governor do? Jason, you're writing about this on your website. Where can folks find out more?
At newyorkfamilies.org.